Good morning, welcome to Breakfast here on Sky News. It is 7 o'clock. On today's show, we're talking about the end of the friendship between the world's most powerful man and the world's richest as Donald Trump and Elon Musk go at it, no holds barred.
And a very good night for Labour as they pull off a shock and win a by-election for the Scottish Parliament.
And in sports, rumours in the papers suggest David Beckham could finally get his long-awaited knighthood in the upcoming King's Birthday honours for services to football.
It is Friday, the 6th of June.
Davy Russell, Scottish Labour Party, 8,000.
That is Scottish Labour winning the by-election last night, beating the SNP and Reform. We'll be hearing from a Reform councillor.
And what's clear from Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse is, yes, they want a UK Labour government to go further and faster in improving their lives, but they also want an end to this rotten SNP government that's done so much damage to Scotland.
It's a narrow victory for Labour amid a big reform surge in Scotland. But with a defeat for the SNP, that's disappointment for the First Minister here. Less than a year to go until the wider Holyrood elections.
In the US, the bromance blows up big time as Elon Musk and Donald Trump have a spectacular public falling out. Russia's ambassador tells Sky News that the UK is directly involved in Ukrainian strikes inside his country.
I don't believe that Americans, that has been denied by President Trump, definitely, but it has not been denied by London.
The government unveils new plans to end corridor care in A&E and cut waiting times for ambulances.
And elsewhere in sport, Masters champion Rory McIlroy is struggling to find his form just a week out from a major tournament.
Good morning, good to have you with us here on Breakfast on Sky News. Scottish Labour has won the Hamilton by-election from the Scottish National Party. A surprise victory in what many saw as a two-horse race between the SNP and Reform UK. Labour's new MSP claimed the results sent a message to Nigel Farage and what he called the poison of reform on the day that Reform's chairman, Zia Youssef, resigned in a row over women wearing burqas. Now, the SNP had campaigned hard in the area, and their defeat will come as a big blow to leader John Swinney less than a year for next spring's Holyrood elections. Let's take a closer look at the numbers from last night, and the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse by-election was won by Scottish Labour's Davy Russell, who got just over 8,500 votes. That's a gain from the Scottish National Party. Mr Russell's victory was closely followed by the SNP, with Reform UK finishing a similarly close third. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis was there for the count.
The odds were stacked against them. A bruised and battered Labour until now.
Scottish Labour Party, 8,000.
Sarwar, what's your reaction to that then?
Well, look, an incredible night, and it demonstrates, and let me just say this, it demonstrates a few things here, and it's important to reflect on the result, but also the conversations we had on the doorsteps. And what's clear from Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse is, yes, they want a UK Labour government to go further and faster in improving their lives, but they also want an end to this rotten SNP government.
This is an extraordinary turn of events for Labour, and something privately they did not think would happen. They were firefighting during this campaign at every turn, and they think now there's momentum towards Holyrood 2026.
We all feel we've been let down by the SNP. They've broken our NHS, wasted our money, and after nearly 2 decades, they don't deserve another chance.
Soul searching for second place SNP. They had fought a campaign capitalising on Labour's recent misfortunes. What's your reaction to that loss?
Well, look, obviously it's very close. We're disappointed not to have won, but I think we've demonstrated in this election that we're a party that's energised, we are united, and we will regroup and we will come back to win.
But a few hundred votes behind the ruling SNP are the newbies, Reform UK, almost wiping out the Tories in a contest mired in smear.
We've got no problem at all. We're doing really well in this election.
Deputy Leader Richard Tice ambushed after the party chairman quit amid discussions around banning the burqa.
Well, let's have a discussion about all these things, all these important issues, as opposed to not discussing anything and smearing and labelling people.
Should there be a ban on the burqa? Should there be a ban on the burqa, Mr Tice?
Debate, that's the issue, isn't it?
What do you think? Should there be a ban on the burqa?
I think we should have a national debate, and that's a fantastic thing to do.
This may have been Reform's first proper taste of Scotland, but it also signals game on for Keir Starmer, who will pivot Labour's energy as the SNP hopes to cling on to power in less than 1 year's time. Conor Gillis, Sky News in Lanarkshire.
Our political correspondent Rob Powell is in Glasgow with the latest.
The main emotion for Labour activists this morning will probably be one of relief. There'd been a genuine expectation that they wouldn't take this seat amid unpopularity from Westminster emanating policies around winter fuel allowance and benefit cuts, amid a potential surge in reform votes, potentially feeding off that Labour vote as well. But they've done it, albeit by around 600 votes. What's interesting is that I think in normal times, sort of whatever they are, you would expect this result would probably be a complete expectation. In Hamilton, much as in Glasgow, pre the SNP surge, it was a Labour stronghold. Now, it turned SNP for a while, but then last year, the whole area turned red again. 2 years ago, Labour won the by-election in Hamilton. They cemented that in at the general election last year as well. The SNP government here in Scotland have been in power for a very long time, with genuine frustrations among many about how certain elements of the country on a domestic level are being run. So there is an argument there that the win should have been bigger, I guess. The fact that it was narrow certainly doesn't mean that Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar is certain to be on the march for Holyrood and the First Minister's office in the Holyrood elections next year. But I think it will give the party a much-needed shot in the arm. The Prime Minister has tweeted this morning congratulating Davy Russell, the new MSP, and saying people in Scotland have once again voted for change. I think for the SNP, they're denied that political boost. John Swinney took over as leader of the SNP a couple of months before the election last year. With a party in chaos. He took the party to a devastating result in the general election, but since then has stabilised the party. It's been less noisier as a political operation, and I think there has been quite a big degree of renewed hope that with Labour plunging and Labour's woes in terms of unpopular policies, there might spark a renewal for the SNP. A win here, I think, would have been tangible evidence of that. They've been denied that. As for reform, the new Labour MSP used his speech to say that this showed Scotland turning away from the poison of Farage and rejecting Farage. Now, coming from a standing start to 26% of the vote is a funny-looking way of rejecting a party. I think this shows that after decades of Scotland being very, very anti-Nigel Farage and any party he was associated with, this shows that reform could well be a force in the coming months here in Scotland. What's really interesting is where they are getting their support from. They are clearly feeding off ex-Tory voters, suggesting that in those Holyrood elections next year, if the Scottish Conservatives don't do something, they could be in serious trouble at the hands of reform. But the SNP vote share was also down significantly as well, suggesting that maybe some pro-union SNP voters are switching to reform amid frustrations with how the SNP is running the government from Holyrood and how Labour is running the UK from Westminster. So once again, I think the big takeaway from this is actually reform on the map, an electoral force in Scotland, and producing some unexpected and quite messy results.
That's Rob Powell in Glasgow. Amanda's here with me now. It's tricky, isn't it? Is it a bad 24 hours for reform? Because as we heard from that councillor I spoke to about 10 minutes ago, they've come from almost nowhere to third and pretty close to the winner there in Hamilton. But at the same time, they've lost their chairman. So a mixed bag, if we're being kind.
Yes, it's kind of the roller coaster ride of supporting reform, I guess, and also very similar, bringing back memories, I think, for what happened with UKIP and Brexit Party and so on as well. I mean, yeah, 58 votes, Thomas Kerr, the councillor, pointed out they had at the general election, and now within 1,500 of winning that seat. I mean, they've never won an election in Scotland, and now, you know, they really are seriously in contention. Now, you could argue perhaps that a large part of that success in broadening and professionalising their appeal as a political party is down to Zia Youssef, the chairman, who's now resigned in very dramatic, scathing fashion last night with this tweet saying he no longer believed working to get a reform government was a good use of his time. I mean, absolutely devastating there. And it seemingly came out of the blue for the party. I mean, clearly behind the scenes there have been a lot of rows and divisions. And we know this week there was, he was clearly quite angry about Sarah Poachin, the party's new MP. Their only women of of course, asking about a ban on the burqa and PMQs. He then tweeted saying that that was a dumb idea. Many in the party thought, well, that's not very appropriate for the chairman to be criticising one of your own MPs who only got 5 of them. And clearly he, I think, felt perhaps he'd been sidelined, slightly moved to kind of be responsible for that kind of Doge-style council waste-cutting unit that they've been bringing in. Interestingly, the person he brought in with him to run that operation, Nathaniel Field, has also resigned, saying, well, he can't really do the job without him. And he really was someone who's a successful businessman, brought in to be more professional, move the party away from being this kind of Nigel Farage personality vehicle, but clearly has, this has ended in this massive bust-up, which really raises questions how possible that is, because this has happened previously with kind of other figures within Nigel Farage's previous parties, but many voters, of course, I think, do support it because of Nigel Farage, and will they really notice something like this?
I'm glad someone switched our lights back on there, because they flickered off there for a second. I tell you, Amanda, where the lights have actually gone off is in the relationship between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. It's broken down spectacularly and turned into a very personal and very public feud. It's blown up over the last 24 hours, in fact, with Elon Musk claiming that Donald Trump appears in files relating to paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, and Trump threatening to terminate Musk's company's contracts with the US government. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Mark Stone, has it all.
Is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space.
We have all wondered when these two would fall out, but could anyone have predicted that when it did happen, it would spiral so fast? With one tweet, a truly imploding relationship after an extraordinary escalation in the space of just a day. Time to drop the really big bomb, Musk wrote. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. And then, mark this post for the future. The truth will come out, Musk wrote. The spiral had begun hours earlier, before those remarkable comments. It was in his lunchtime meeting with the German Chancellor that President Trump was asked about his old pal's criticism of the massive spending bill the president is trying to push through Congress.
I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
Musk hates the bill. It will raise the country's debt, he says, and he has been publicly critical of it.
I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate, because that's billions and billions of dollars, and it really is unfair.
Musk was watching, of course he was, and he shot back on X, of course, to his 220 million followers. Whatever, he wrote. Keep the EV solar incentive cuts in the bill, even though no oil and gas subsidies are touched, very unfair, but ditch the mountain of disgusting pork in the bill. He went on, in the entire history of civilization, there has never been legislation that is both big and beautiful. Everyone knows this. And then the kicker. Without me, Trump would have lost the election. The Dems would control the House and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Trump's response, Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave the White House. It didn't look that way on Friday when the farewell seemed to be a fond one.
Elon's service to America has been without comparison in modern history.
Now Trump is saying this. The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. And now Musk is musing with a poll whether it's time to set up a new political party. And then, late in the afternoon, the wheels came off. We do not know quite what Musk is alleging with his reference to Jeffrey Epstein. He and Trump were socially acquainted during the 1990s and 2000s. Epstein died in prison in 2019. He was awaiting trial for sexual abuse and the trafficking of minors. In an early evening statement, the White House press secretary appeared to try to de-escalate, focusing on the political, not the personal. This is an unfortunate episode from Elon, she said, who is unhappy with the one big beautiful bill because it does not include the policies he wanted. The president is focused on passing this historic piece of legislation and making our country great again. This is no trivial spat. It is between the most consequential president in American history and the world's richest man. Together, they have massive political and financial clout. We have seen what that looks like when they work together, working apart against each other. It could be so much more consequential still. And it just got very, very personal. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
Let's talk to the opposition now. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp joins me now. Isn't that a bit like Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick in your own party?
Well, I think it's more like Nigel Farage falling out with Rupert Lowe and his own chairman, Mr Youssef, who went off in a huff yesterday. So I think that is the more appropriate analogy. Mr Farage's one-man personality cult seems to be falling apart here, a little bit like the spat you just reported.
Yeah. Why is it when I've spoken to Conservatives this week, they always bring up reform? What's the obsession?
No obsession, but you asked for the most apt analogy in British politics, and in terms of people having massive falling outs, I think that is the most apt analogy.
We'll come back to what Robert Jenrick's been up to in a moment, but actually, in terms of falling outs, what did happen, they would say successfully overnight in Hamilton, was Reform UK went from nowhere to coming third. Labour won. Does the Conservative Party have any relevance in Scotland anymore?
Well, I think it does. Obviously, the Conservatives are the opposition in the Scottish Parliament.
Yeah.
And, you know, we are fighting hard in Scotland, as we are across the whole country. I mean, that particular constituency where the by-election took place is an area where we've never really done well. It's historically been a huge Labour heartland. More recently, the SNP have held it. I think Labour won it at the last general election, that sort of area, the Westminster seat that roughly overlaps with the Scottish Parliament constituency. Labour won, I think, with a 10,000-odd majority. So we've always struggled in that particular area, but obviously we have more work to do.
A distant fourth. Reform were nowhere last time, a few dozen votes, and they've shot straight into third place and pretty close to winning it.
Yeah, look, they came third, we came fourth. We've got a lot more work to do.
There was a big distance there, Look, in terms of the work you need to do, it looks like you're edging closer to what could be a policy around the European Convention on Human Rights. Kemi Badenoch's going to talk about that today. We've heard Mel Stride anticipate that in recent days as well. Is that going to be the policy that you will pull the UK out of the European Convention on Human Rights?
Yeah, we are increasingly of the view that that is what needs to happen, because the way that the Strasbourg court and actually domestic UK courts apply the European Convention means that some of the things that the British public elected Parliament to do actually can't be done. That applies to things like protecting veterans from vexatious prosecution. It includes to things like oil and gas drilling, but it also applies to immigration, where, for example, we think every single foreign criminal in this country should be returned to their country of nationality. Not some of them, but all of them. And the ECHR prevents that. I'll give you an example. There was a Zimbabwean paedophile who should have been deported back to Zimbabwe, as our law requires, but a court, a UK court in fact, using the ECHR, said no, if he goes back to Zimbabwe, he might face some hostility because he's a paedophile. And so instead they said he can stay here, where he exposes British children to risk. I think that's unacceptable. Now, we don't want to shoot from the hip and do this without proper thought. So what Kemi is going to announce in a few hours' time is that Lord Wolfson, one of the country's most eminent barristers, also the Shadow Attorney General, will conduct a 3 to 4 month detailed legal review into the various complexities of the question. So, you know, we think in principle this is a move we're going to have to take. But before we take a final decision, we do want to go through the legal detail to make sure we thought it through properly. Because unlike Reform, who just kind of shoot from the hip and say the first thing that comes into their head or the first thing that comes into Nigel Farage's head, we do want to think it through properly so that the media and the public can have confidence that this is going to work in practice.
There's an irony here, though, isn't there? You've been pointing the finger at Labour for all the reviews they've done since coming into government. Many of your previous leaders as Prime Ministers, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, talked about pulling us out of the European Convention. And here you are. It sounds like you'd like to come out of it, but you're going to have another review anyway that's going to kick things into the autumn.
Well, we're talking about 3 to 4 months, and the review will consider the specific legal questions.
What do you think now? Do you think we should come out of it as a country?
My view in principle is that we should, because we need to let the democratically elected Parliament do what the public want us to do, which is control our borders and protect veterans and everything else. But I also agree that before we commit to that, we should have it properly legally reviewed so that we know the full implications. We understand what the challenges are. We understand how those challenges can be overcome. We understand what it'll enable us to do.
Because, of course, there could be huge negative implications of this. There's plenty of people who like the European Convention on Human Rights. They like protection of human rights. That sets us apart from a lot of the world as a progressive, modernised nation. We protect people's rights.
Right, and of course we want to make sure those rights, like free speech, for example, continue to be protected. So that's one of the questions, of course, this review will address, although I would also observe that countries like Australia and New Zealand managed to protect those rights without being in the European Convention on Human Rights. And, of course, this country has enjoyed, a lot of protections and rights that long predate the European Convention. This country, the United Kingdom, has led the world in establishing rights for its citizens. But that is a really important point, and we need to make sure we have good answers to those questions.
Is everyone in the Shadow Cabinet on board with this? Because coming back to Robert Jenrick, who I mentioned at the start there, it does seem that he never stopped campaigning for the leadership, even though he lost the race a few months ago.
Look, Robert is a very energetic member of the Shadow Cabinet who is working hard, as we all are, to hold this failing Labour government to account. And we're, all of us colleagues, working towards that purpose, working in the same direction, exposing Labour's failings, whether it's on the taxes they've put up. They lied before the general election, put the taxes up, whether it's Lord Hermer refusing to review the sentence of rapists and all
Hang on. They said they wouldn't put up income tax, VAT, national insurance.
And they put up national insurance.
For individuals.
And they put up
individuals. They put it up for companies.
Yeah, and the OBR say that 76% of that national insurance increase will end up getting passed on to workers. That is a tax rise on workers, and as we speak, people are losing their jobs or having their hours cut down because of Rachel Reeves' outrageous jobs tax. It is damaging our economy. People are losing their jobs, and Labour, I remember almost exactly a year ago to the day, we Conservatives in the election campaign said Labour would put up people's taxes by a huge amount, and Labour said we were lying, and then literally 8 weeks later in government, they did precisely that. And that's why the public are so angry with Labour.
Who caused the biggest tax burden in memory?
Well, look,
the Conservative Party did.
This current Labour government, the tax burden is much higher today than it was a year ago.
You took us there.
Look, taxes under the last government were higher than I would have liked, and we're going to work up plans to get the tax burden back down again. But the highest tax burden in history is the tax burden we're suffering today under this Labour government because of Rachel Reeves' budget. Just a few weeks ago, she put up national insurance, she put up business rates for small businesses. The list goes on, and that is why the growth prospects for our economy this year have been halved.
The economy is still growing. Yes, revisions have been downward from the OECD and the International Monetary Fund, I believe. But still, the economy is growing faster than many. So Labour would say their growth aspirations seem to be happening.
Come off it. So look, when we left office, we had the fastest growing economy in the G7, and inflation was down at the 2% target. Inflation is now almost double that, and our growth forecasts have been slashed because Rachel Reeves has imposed these massive tax rises across the entire economy.
Chris Philp, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, the government is pledging to spend a bit more money, Chris Philp will like to hear, on corridor care in A&E with a £450 million investment in the NHS in England. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, says it means hundreds of thousands more people will get seen within the 4-hour target.
The £450 million isn't just what it buys in terms of new facilities, 40 new same-day emergency treatment centres, 500 more ambulances, a new urgent access mental health facilities, all great, but what's the impact? It means about 800,000 more people will be seen within the 4 hours that they should have done. Now, over more than a decade now, we haven't been in the NHS meeting those critical targets.
Ashish is here with me now. Ashish Joshi, our health correspondent. Can we put some context, Ashish, around this amount of money? £450 million is a lot of money by anybody's standards. But in terms of what the government is spending on the NHS, a drop in the ocean of some £100 billion. Is this going to make a difference?
This will make a difference in the short and immediate term.
Yeah.
The NHS has already set its sights on the next few months. NHS Trust leaders are preparing for another busy winter. We simply cannot afford to have the same scenes being played out as we've seen winter after winter for the last few years. Patients in corridors waiting hours on end, ambulances stacked up outside, can't discharge their patients, patients waiting around in emergency bays for a bed in a hospital and not getting the treatment or care they deserve. So this is money designed to tackle what will be another difficult winter. There will be a 10-year plan which will be published later. That will take care of the shift away from hospitals to community care. But at the moment, Wes Streeting is really concerned about the scenes that he will be very keen to avoid, and patients simply can't afford that level of poor care anymore because the pressure it puts on the hospital system. So all of this money, the extra ambulances, the urgent treatment centres, paramedics being armed with the history of a patient when they attend to a patient, is all designed to keep patients away from a hospital, keep the pressure off the hospital through another very busy winter. But there has to be longer-term planning for social care to be able to discharge patients through a hospital, making sure that that flow continues. Patients turning up at hospital who need urgent and emergency care get it, and if they need a bed, they can find one.
Ashish, good stuff. Thank you very much indeed. OK, time to have a quick look now at the weather.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
It is looking a bit unsettled as we head into the weekend, for quite a while yet, in fact, with widespread heavy showers or more prolonged rain, especially tomorrow. It is already showery out there with parts of eastern England seeing more prolonged rain. That rain will clear this morning to leave a mix of sunny spells and showers across the UK and Ireland. The showers will be less widespread than yesterday, with much of central and southwest England avoiding them. Temperatures feeling similar to what they've been recently, but lighter winds and a bit more sunshine mean it should feel warmer. The afternoon will bring further showers, some heavy and thundery, but much of Britain will dry up by this evening.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Coming next on Breakfast, we will hear from the UK's Russian ambassador who tells Yalda Hakim that he partly blames the UK for Ukraine's drone attack. Welcome back to Breakfast. Coming up, we will have a pollster after last night's shock result in the Hamilton by-election with Labour winning.
And in the sport, if the papers are to be believed, David Beckham is in line for a knighthood, finally.
But first, our top stories this morning, and Scottish Labour has indeed won the Hamilton by-election from the SNP, a surprise victory in what many saw as a two-horse race between the SNP and Reform UK. David Russell will become Labour's new MSP for the region, a winning margin of some 600 votes over the Scottish National Party. Reform came a close third. The relationship between Donald Trump and Elon Musk has broken down, and in spectacular fashion, turning into a very public and very personal feud. The online spat helped wipe off around $150 billion in shares from Musk's company Tesla. Here, the government's pledging to end corridor care in A&E as part of a new drive to cut waiting times and improve ambulance delays. It's to spend almost £450 million on a series of reforms that are aimed at improving the quality of emergency services across the country, they say. Bosses at 6 water companies have been banned from receiving their bonuses in a government clampdown on poor performance. The new legislation comes into effect today, and it's in reaction to the company's breaches of environmental, customer service and financial standards. Ukraine says Russia has launched a large-scale missile and drone attack across the country overnight. At least 4 people were killed in the capital, Kyiv, and 20 others were injured there, according to the city's mayor. Multiple explosions were heard, with rescue workers responding at several locations, with fires breaking out in some buildings. Meanwhile, Russia's ambassador to the UK has called out Britain for its alleged involvement in Ukraine's attacks that were deep inside Russian territory. Andrei Kelin has claimed that Ukraine used British technology to plan its attack. In an interview with my colleague Yalda Hakim.
Our hope that we will get a reaction from London as well, because I will tell you, such kind of attack involves, of course, provision of very high technology, so-called geospace data, which is only can be done by those who has it in possession, and this is London and Washington. I don't believe that Americans, that has been denied by President Trump, definitely, but it has not been denied by London. We perfectly know how much London is involved, how deeply British forces are involved in working together with Ukrainian in targeting Crimean Bridge, for instance.
Well, in the last hour, I asked the government about this in the form of Environment Secretary Steve Reid, discussing those allegations of UK involvement in last weekend's attack.
We want there to be peace talks. We want this conflict to end, but it's quite right that we should support Ukraine. I don't know the answer to that particular question, however.
Let me just push you on that. I appreciate it's off brief for you and appreciate I know all the details, but is there a risk that Britain gets sucked into this more than perhaps the electorate would be comfortable with?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on something when I don't know what the facts were in that particular case. I do know that the people of this country and the government of this country want to stand foursquare alongside Ukraine. We need those peace talks to happen. We need peace to happen in that region. We can't allow Russia to be getting away with invading any more countries.
Breaking news to bring you now, coming from Gaza, and the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, once again says all aid distribution sites are closed today, and reopening date will be announced later. This coming to us via Reuters. You may remember that earlier in the week, the GHF, which is controversial in some eyes, not least other more established NGOs like Oxfam, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and Médecins Sans Frontières. The GHF, which has been controlling a lot of the aid getting into Gaza, has closed again today. It closed for a day earlier in the week as well. That's just coming to us via Reuters. We will try and get more on that situation throughout the morning here on Sky News. In the meantime, going back to what Steve Reid was talking to us about, the Environment Secretary, bosses at 6 water companies have been banned from receiving their bonuses as of today in the government clampdown on poor performance. Matthew Thompson is here to tell us more about this. And this is all to do with the government grappling with, well, sewage in our waterways and also prices going up for water customers, of which we are all.
Indeed, and prices going up and customer satisfaction rates going sharply down. I mean, this is all the context for... it's been a pretty punishing few months or years even for water companies, but many people feel that is fully deserved. And in this particular episode, there are 6 water companies who are having their top executives, their bonuses are being banned. So it's Thames Water, Anglian Water, Wessex Water, United Utilities, Yorkshire Water and Southern Water. And it's new rules that Ofwat, the regulator, has as of today, and they're pretty much taking immediate action. And they're banning bonuses for the previous financial year. So it's not an indefinite ban or anything. And providing the companies sort of adhere to the standards expected of them in the next year, they could theoretically pay bonuses. But it's for breaches of environmental issues, for customer satisfaction, and also financial irregularities as well. But the point is, as you alluded to, it's a very politically popular thing at the moment, given the controversy around sewage. And certainly Steve Reid, the Environment Secretary, speaking to you from a beautiful beach, was full-throated in his support of the measures.
A beautiful beach with dirty water, he said.
Well,
there was
indeed.
a warning not to go in that seaside this morning, yeah.
As he said.
I'm on the beach of Portsmouth. There's a notice just here telling people not to go in the water because of the poor water quality, the levels of pollution that are in it. Despite that happening over the last decade, the water company bosses responsible for those businesses have given themselves over £100 million in bonuses. Well, the era of profiting from pollution comes to an end with this government. So this morning, we're announcing a ban on the bonuses for 6 of those water company chief executives. That's 2/3 of all of the companies no longer receiving their bonus.
So politically popular, the one problem that is potentially worth noting in all this is that it's creating a difficult environment for water companies to function and raise cash. And in fact, no less a figure than Sir John Cunliffe, former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, who's writing a report on what to do about the water companies, has warned that the climate, politically and regulatory climate around water companies is making it very difficult for them to do business. The government doesn't want to nationalise them. It wants market solutions, but it may not be left with much more on the table in the current climate.
Look, I put that to Steve Reid, certainly about that investment from the US KKR pulling out of investing in Thames. He pointed to the fact that they've got other investment lined up as well. Matthew, thank you very much indeed. Well, Scottish Labour has won the Hamilton by-election from the SNP, a somewhat surprise victory in what many saw as a 2-horse race between the SNP and Reform UK. Joining me now to crunch the numbers and the outcomes is Mark Diffley, a pollster and founder and director of the research organisation Diffley Partnership. Mark, it's good to see you. Which is the most surprising element of these results? Is it Reform? Is it Labour? Is it the SNP? Which one?
Good morning, Matt, and thanks for having me on. Yes, well, I think the Reform vote, the size of the Reform vote, the scale of the Reform vote is probably the story of the evening. Over a quarter of the vote in a central belt Scottish constituency is, well, to say outperforming expectations would be somewhat of an understatement, I think. Yes, they came third, and the spoils go to Labour. A win's a win. But I think the seismic event here is the scale of the Reform vote. Now, some of that may be a kind of typical by-election protest type vote, of course, and it may not be reflected in the national vote share when we get to the Holyrood elections this time next year or in 11 months' time. But it's a game changer. It's really put the cat among the pigeons, I think, as far as Scottish politics is concerned. For Labour, of course, having had months now of being in the doldrums, this gives them a real kind of psychological boost.
Yeah. Because sorry to interrupt, Mark. We were talking beforehand that we thought it could be a 2-horse race. We were aware of the momentum Reform UK had in the constituency, and of course they put a lot of resource behind that. We'd seen visits in recent days and weeks from the big names of Reform, Farage, Tice, and the like. But as you said in your answer there, a win is a win for Labour. A relief is a relief, then, is it?
Oh, absolutely. Months and months in the doldrums. Anna Sawar, the Scottish Labour leader, has really been through the ringer in recent months. Frankly, as a result of some of the decisions that have been made out with his control, i.e., by the incoming UK Labour government in Westminster. So it's been a particularly frustrating time for him. But he can now kind of hold this result up and say, right, we are now We are now back in the game. We've beaten the SNP in a key constituency, and so therefore we can beat the SNP in a national election. Now, of course, it won't be as straightforward as that, but he can now say that. So psychologically, a great win for Labour and real progress for reform.
Where does it leave the SNP then, and John Swinney in particular?
Well, I mean, it leaves the SNP really, the story of the SNP in the last year having been really trounced at the general election this time last year, as everyone will recall. You know, John Swinney has come in, he has steadied the ship, their polling has stabilised, it hasn't continued to go down. And so progress has been made by the SNP, but the problem is they've lost this election, and the narrative throughout the whole campaign was that the SNP would win, and so they will be kind of licking their wounds, I think. And you know, the fact is they're probably still, you know, the polling suggests at a national level they are still ahead, and are likely at this stage still to be the largest party. But this, I think, introduces a level of sort of fragility to that narrative, which last night has really kind of reinforced, and so they've got a lot of thinking to do, I think, as a result.
By the same token, they may well argue that by-elections can often be outliers, can often throw up surprising results. 44%, I think, was the turnout. I don't know if that's particularly high for that part of the world. But Mark, just to finish off, I appreciate we're focusing on Scotland here, but in extrapolating what these results might mean for Scotland and Wales as well, by the way, because it's those elections in the two devolved nations next year that are quite key, because obviously a general election is quite a few years away yet. What can we draw from this as to how things might go, both at Holyrood and in Cardiff?
Well, I think, you know, the polling in Wales suggests that Reform is doing even better in Wales than it is in Scotland. And of course, Reform and its predecessor parties have got a history of representation in the Welsh Assembly, which they don't have in the Scottish Parliament. What's in Reform's favour, of course, is that both in Scotland and in Wales, they are PR, they're proportional representation elections. So even a relatively low vote share can give them, what will give them, I'm almost certain of it, significant representation at Holyrood next year, which is going to be really new for us in Scotland, something that we're not used to. So there is real change afoot in Scottish politics, and last night has really reinforced that, I think.
Mark Diffley joining us from Edinburgh this morning. Appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Matt.
James is back. Let's have a quick chat about sport. It's remarkable, isn't it? I don't think he's kicked a football in anger for years and years and years now, but leading our sport chat, David Beckham.
I know, he's back, it feels like. He's not chasing bees or creating his honey that he's doing. It's actually finally something I think he's desperately been holding on to and wanting for so many years. It takes him to a half a century to turn 50, and all of a sudden it seems like he's in line for a knighthood finally. That's the reports in all the papers. The front page of The Sun is covering it, and finally long-awaited knighthood seems to be heading his way next week.
Certainly does, if the papers be believed, of course.
Sometimes they're believed, sometimes they are. We'll cover that in the sport, plus we'll hear from England head coach Sarina Wiegman.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
How do you manage to keep your spirits up and the spirits of your teammates after challenges you may face?
Self-confidence in yourself and your own ability is such an important aspect to have.
I've had a number of injuries the last year and a half or 2 years, and they're taking their toll on my head at times.
Sometimes you just need to grab somebody and just give them a hug, tell them that it'll be okay.
Professional footballers helping young people with their mental health. That's the aim of virtual soccer schools, alongside learning platform Amazing People Schools. Online, in person, and with AI technology.
My question is, how do you deal with stress on and off the pitch?
Football is the most powerful sport in the world. And utilising footballers, we just see them as players on the pitch, passing the ball and scoring goals, but they have so much more to offer. So at VSS, we're providing them with a platform to showcase their mental health strategies, their setbacks, how they deal with anxiety, pressure and growth mindset, just not on the pitch, but how they utilise it off the pitch as well.
Former Arsenal defender Thomas Vermaelen was the latest footballer to take part in the charity's first ever in-person session.
allow yourself to be disappointed?
I enjoy passing on experiences. You know, if it's about mental health, my career, the pressure I've been through, giving my experience to the younger generation is something that I really like. In earlier years, we didn't really speak about it, you know, so it's just we get along and we go through tough times, but you hear now players basically after their career opening up about the struggles they had during. As ex-professionals, if we can give some sort of experience of insight, what to expect, or any advice we can give to the younger generation, I think it's only good. We can prepare them a little bit.
That sentiment was shared by Chelsea midfielder Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall.
It is important in this day and age to talk about it because there's a lot of people that go through it. As a youngster, I probably let things affect me a little bit more, and I was a bit more naive to it. But the older you get, the more experience you get, I think you just learn to not let it get you down. If you see negative comments or whatever, just don't let it get you down. Look, just see the positive ones and how you can use that in a good way. As I've gone along in my career, I've learned to deal with that in a better way.
Pressure is in the moment can be very uncomfortable. At the same time, it's also something what gives excitement to the career and the games. But yeah, if you really struggle with the pressure and you see it's affecting your performances, you know, I wish then in those days you could speak about it more, but I think in those days it was more like a sign of weakness sometimes.
It's that perception of weakness around mental health that the charity wants to break down amongst the young.
It's amazing to see the young people come on to our sessions, have that confidence to ask the player a question on real tough subject matters such as social media, resilience, growth mindset, bullying, and how those players have dealt with it within their own world and giving back to the next generation.
Hi there, my name's Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. I'm here today to talk about stress, anxiety, mental health.
And VSS is taking it one step further with the introduction of AI and on-demand help as part of the service they provide.
We will essentially make it so that people can go online, ask you a question, and then your answer will play.
Having Kiernan taking part in this.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Good stuff, James. Thank you very much indeed. Still to come here on Breakfast, we'll be speaking to the former boss of Porsche in the UK, and BMW, by the way, about his plans for a record-breaking row across the Pacific with his son and friends.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
Enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster that's just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States. It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change.
We've been crushed. Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Now, a record-breaking rower is setting his sights on a brand new mission. Kevin Gaskell and his five-man team are setting their sights on breaking the world record for rowing across the Pacific. And they're raising money for the Lewis Moody Foundation in the meantime. I'm really pleased to say that Kevin joins me now from California. Kevin, good to see you. Clearly not on the water yet. When do you set off?
We set off in 5 hours' time.
Oh, wow. OK, well, look, I appreciate you talking to me so soon. I'd be pretty nervous at this point in time. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I mean, look, we've trained for this for 2 years. We've been here for 10 days to get the feel of the water. There's some big water out there, but it is what it is. You know, you go out and you face the storms and you row through them. So we know what we're letting ourselves in for. Nobody's forcing us to do this.
No, big water has to be the understatement of the year when you're looking at the Pacific.
Yeah, I mean, there's a forecast at the moment for 35 knot winds and kind of 25 to 30 foot waves. We're in a 27-foot boat, which we're rowing, and we only sit 6 inches out of the water. So, you know, it's going to be very challenging. But we're doing it for a great cause. We're doing it to help Lewis to fight brain tumours. And so we've been very fortunate. We're supported by a number of great sponsors, and we've set our sights on breaking the world record.
Now, Kevin, if you'll allow me to point out a couple of things. You're obviously in fantastic nick, but you are in your mid-60s. Everyone else in the boat you're old enough to be their dad, and you are the dad of one of them.
Well, I am their dad in one case.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm 67. I'll be the oldest guy to row the Pacific. The other guys range in age from 34 to 40-ish. But, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. Mountains, polar expeditions, rowing the Atlantic. And, you know, I believe that people told me for a long time I was too young to do stuff. Now they tell me I'm too old to do stuff. And I don't believe either of those. If you stay fit, stay focused, you can go and do it.
There is some, again, this is not a personal observation, but there is something about successful business people, businessmen really, of a certain age who want to carry on with those adventures. We're actually talking in the next hour about the power of saying yes to things when, in their late 20s, people start to say no and don't have adventures and don't try new things. You know, we've seen it with other business leaders as well, who just want to get out there, do triathlons, achieve aims, Richard Branson and people like that. What keeps you going, Kevin? Why do you want to keep pushing yourself and challenging yourself? Because I'm not sure I could spend 5 minutes on the Pacific, let alone however long it's going to take you.
Well, I enjoy the challenge. I really do. I work very hard. I'm still chairman of a number of companies, so I work hard. And this is a way to get away. You know, the world record we're chasing is 51 days. So it's 51 days of constant rowing. We have no support vessel. There's nobody with us. We row in shifts, but we row 24/7 for 51 days. So, yes, it's physically demanding. And it doesn't get any easier when you get to my age. But I keep training, I keep fighting, I keep pushing. And we're aiming for that world record, 2 world records, the oldest and the fastest. So it's having that challenge, it's having that passion, it's wanting to go out there and do something that's different. And as I say to people, you know, I want to die with memories. I don't want to die with dreams. I want to go and do the things that I dream about doing, so I go and do them.
That is a really good way of seeing it. It just so happens I've spoken to a couple of British women who are also rowing across the Pacific. I don't know if you're aware of their expedition, and we talked about just some of the mundaneties of everyday life on the boat. Things like going to the toilet and what kind of food you eat and how you have enough drinking water. That must require an awful lot of planning and a complete lack of embarrassment.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of planning. I mean, there are nearly 5,000 items on the boat, and every one of those has to be checked, counted, and checked again. The toilet thing, yeah, people often speak about it, but we have a bucket, and we're all looking that way, and the bucket's that way. We don't watch each other go to the toilet, but it's just part of life, isn't it? So we very quickly get over that. By day 2, we've forgotten about that. So that's the easy thing. The tough thing is the psychology. It's keep going 50 days, rowing 2 hours on, 2 hours off is very, very challenging. And of course, sleep deprivation starts to play a part. We start to hallucinate from day 15 or day 20. We have to drink a lot of water. We have to take on a lot of calories. We're burning about 7,000 calories a day. I can't eat 7,000 calories. When I crossed the Atlantic in 35 days, I lost 2 stone. I just can't eat enough food to make up for the calories we're burning.
Sleep deprivation, I know all about. I know all about doing the breakfast this week. Just very quickly, Kevin, I think you grew up in North Wales, as did I, which gives you an inner toughness. Surely it's the North Walian in you that means you're going to power across and break that record.
Well, I started climbing mountains when I was about 10 or 11, so I've been doing outdoorsy stuff ever since, and I've got no plans to stop anytime soon.
Well, Kevin, listen, 5 hours to go. We wish you all the best. Do keep in touch, of course. We'll keep an eye on that dot crossing the Pacific. And when you break the record with the team, please do come back and talk to us. For now, Kevin, thank you very much indeed. You're watching Sky News. We'll be back after this short break.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Good morning, it is 9 o'clock, you're watching Breakfast on Sky News. Today we're talking about the end of the friendship between the world's most powerful man and the world's richest as Donald Trump and Elon Musk go at it, no holds barred.
And a very good night for Labour as they pull off a shock and win a by-election for the Scottish Parliament.
And in sport, rumours in the papers suggest David Beckham could finally get his long-awaited knighthood in the upcoming King's Birthday honours for services to football.
It is Friday, the 6th of June.
Davy Russell, Scottish Labour Party, 8,000.
Scottish Labour win a by-election beating the SNP and Reform UK.
And what's clear from Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse is yes, they want a UK Labour government to go further and faster in improving their lives, but they also want an end to this rotten SNP government that's done so much damage to Scotland.
A disappointing day all round for Reform UK. They came in third as their chairman also quit the party. In the US, the bromance has well and truly blown up as Elon Musk and Donald Trump have a spectacular public falling out. Ukraine claims to shoot down more than 400 Russian drones overnight, and Russia's ambassador tells Sky News that he believes the UK is directly involved in Ukrainian strikes against his country.
I don't believe that Americans, that has been denied by President Trump, definitely, but it has not been denied by London.
The government unveils new plans to end corridor care in A&E and cut waiting times for ambulances.
And elsewhere in sports, Masters champion Rory McIlroy is struggling to find his form just a week out from a major tournament.
Good morning, good to have your company. Scottish Labour has won the Hamilton by-election from the SNP, a surprise victory in what many were predicting would be a two-horse race between the SNP and Reform UK. Labour's new MSP claimed the results sent a message to Nigel Farage and what he called the poison of Reform on the day that Reform's chairman, Zia Youssef, resigned in an argument about women wearing burqas. The SNP had campaigned hard in the Hamilton area, and their defeat will come as a big blow to leader John Swinney, less than a year now before next May's Holyrood elections. Let's take a closer look at the numbers from last night, and the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse by-election was won by Scottish Labour's Davy Russell with just over 8,500 votes, again from the Scottish National Party. He was closely followed by the SNP, though, with Reform UK finishing a close third. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis was there overnight.
The odds were stacked against them. A bruised and battered Labour until now.
Scottish Labour Party, 8,000.
And Sarwar, what's your reaction to that then?
Well, look, an incredible night, and it demonstrates, and let me just say this, it demonstrates a few things here, and it's important to reflect on the result, but also the conversations we had on the doorsteps. And what's clear from Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse is yes, they want a UK Labour government to go further and faster in improving their lives, but they also want an end to this rotten SNP government.
This is an extraordinary turn of events for Labour, and something privately they did not think would happen. They were firefighting during this campaign at every turn, and they think now there's momentum towards Holyrood 2026.
We all feel we've been let down by the SNP. They've broken our NHS, wasted our money, and after nearly 2 decades, they don't deserve another chance.
Soul searching for second place SNP. They had fought a campaign capitalising on Labour's recent misfortunes. What's your reaction to that loss?
Well, look, obviously it's very close. We're disappointed not to have won, but I think we've demonstrated in this election that we are a party that's energised, we are united, and we will regroup and we will come back to win.
But a few hundred votes behind the ruling SNP are the newbies, Reform UK, almost wiping out the Tories in a contest mired in smear.
We've got no problem at all. We're doing really well in this election.
Deputy Leader Richard Tice ambushed after the party chairman quit amid discussions around banning the burqa.
Well, let's have a discussion about all these all these important issues, as opposed to not discussing anything and smearing and labelling people.
Should there be a ban on the burqa? Should there be a ban on the burqa, Mr Tice?
Debate. That's the issue, isn't it?
Well, what do you think? Should there be a ban on the burqa?
I think we should have a national debate, and that's a fantastic thing to do.
This may have been Reform's first proper taste of Scotland, but it also signals game on for Keir Starmer, who will pivot Labour's energy as the SNP hopes to cling on to power in less than 1 year's time. Conor Gillis, Sky News in Lanarkshire.
In the last hour, I asked the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp for his reaction after the Conservatives almost lost their deposit.
That particular constituency where the by-election took place is an area where we've never really done well. It's historically been a huge Labour heartland. More recently, the SNP have held it. I think Labour won it at the last general election, that sort of area, the Westminster seat that roughly overlaps with the Scottish Parliament constituency. Labour won, I think, with a 10,000-odd majority. So we've always struggled in that particular area, but obviously we have more work to do.
A distant fourth. Reform were nowhere last time, a few dozen votes, and they've shot straight into third place and pretty close to winning it.
Yeah, look, they came third, we came fourth. We've got a lot more work to do.
Earlier, the Environment Secretary, Steve Reid, gave Labour's reaction to their win in Scotland.
What's gone on there is that last July, the people of Scotland voted for change. Clearly, Labour won many of the parliamentary seats in Scotland because people wanted to see change. They're not getting it in Scotland because they're stuck with an SNP government. So a moment ago, we were talking about that investment that the UK government is putting in to reduce waiting lists for the NHS in England. They've gone down by 200,000. But in Scotland, 1 in every 6 Scottish people is on a waiting list because the SNP are not managing the NHS properly. So people are voting for positive change. They voted for Labour and they voted for Davy Russell as their new MSP. We've got the Scottish elections next year. We'll see how that works. We'll fight for every vote, but this is a very, very positive outcome, and I congratulate our candidate.
Amanda's with me now, our political correspondent, Amanda Acass. A bit of a surprise for Labour, really, and it's not just Steve Reid reacting this morning, the Prime Minister has as well.
Yes, indeed. I think the Prime Minister has woken up shocked but hugely relieved, as many in Labour indeed are. I'll read you out what he's tweeted. He said, "Congratulations to Davy Russell and the team on a fantastic victory. People in Scotland have once again voted for change. Next year, there's a chance to turbocharge delivery by putting Labour in power on both sides of the border." So clearly, the Prime Minister very pleased with all of that. And I think, in a way, so he should be. I mean, all of the polling was suggesting, and indeed what SNP were arguing, this is a two-horse race between the SNP and indeed Reform. And really this win for Labour goes against the prevailing narrative for Labour, which is really that everything's gone wrong since they were elected last summer. And there's so much anger out there on the doorstep over the winter fuel payments, child benefit cap, welfare cuts and all of that. I think they thought they may well be punished for that too. And actually, this has given them an opportunity to kind of regroup 11 months out from the Holyrood elections as well. I think it's kind of an opportunity that to show that they haven't squandered those wins that they took at the last general election when they were really hoping that they were going to be taking control. As Sir Keir Starmer is tweeting about, they're hoping that they would be taking control in Scotland as well, given all the problems the SNP have had with the fraud investigation, the rows over gender recognition and all of that. If they had sort of lost ground on that, it really would have looked like they'd sort of, lost that momentum. I think it's important to say again, despite what Chris Philp was trying to argue there, that this is a big step for Reform too. I mean, they got more than 7,000 votes. Tories only got just over 1,500. I mean, that is extraordinary. That, they came third, we came fourth. Yeah. No, that is a huge gulf between those two parties. They're miles away from them. It's very. Whereas for Reform, they've never won an election in Scotland. I mean, they still haven't. But as you interviewed a councillor earlier who pointed out, well, the general election they got 58 votes in that constituency, and now look at them, more than 7,000. So I think they will be pleased about that and able to argue. Nigel Farage is tweeting this morning saying, I'm delighted with this progress. It's a sign that we are just getting started.
Perhaps less delighted that Zia Youssef, their chairman, stood down yesterday. Reform never without fireworks and not always celebratory, it has to be said at the moment. Amanda, thank you very much indeed. Well, look, talking of fireworks, the relationship between Donald Trump and Elon Musk has broken down spectacularly and turned into a very personal and very public feud now. It's blown up over the past 24 hours, with Musk claiming that Trump appears in files that relate to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Trump then threatening to terminate Musk's company's contracts with the US government. Our US correspondent Mark Stone chews it over now.
Is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space. We have all wondered when these two would fall out, but could anyone have predicted that when it did happen, it would spiral so fast? With one tweet, a truly imploding relationship after an extraordinary escalation in the space of just a day. Time to drop the really big bomb, Musk wrote. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. And then, mark this post for the future. The truth will come out, Musk wrote. The spiral had begun hours earlier, before those remarkable comments. It was in his lunchtime meeting with the German Chancellor that President Trump was asked about his old pal's criticism of the massive spending bill the president is trying to push through Congress.
I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
Musk hates the bill. It will raise the country's debt, he says, and he has been publicly critical of it.
I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate, because that's billions and billions of dollars, and it really is unfair.
Musk was watching, of course he was, and he shot back on X, of course, to his 220 million followers. Whatever, he wrote. Keep the EV solar incentive cuts in the bill, even though no oil and gas subsidies are touched, very unfair, but ditch the mountain of disgusting pork in the bill. He went on, in the entire history of civilization, there has never been legislation that is both big and beautiful. Everyone knows this. And then the kicker. Without me, Trump would have lost the election. The Dems would control the House, and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Trump's response: Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave the White House. It didn't look that way on Friday, when the farewell seemed to be a fond one.
Elon's service to America has been without comparison in modern history.
Now Trump is saying this: the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. And now Musk is musing with a poll whether it's time to set up a new political party. And then, late in the afternoon, the wheels came off. We do not know quite what Musk is alleging with his reference to Jeffrey Epstein. He and Trump were socially acquainted during the 1990s and 2000s. Epstein died in prison in 2019. He was awaiting trial for sexual abuse and the trafficking of minors. In an early evening statement, the White House press secretary appeared to try to de-escalate, focusing on the political, not the personal. This is an unfortunate episode from Elon, she said, who is unhappy with the one big beautiful bill because it does not include the policies he wanted. The president is focused on passing this historic piece of legislation and making our country great again. This is no trivial spat. It is between the most consequential president in American history and the world's richest man. Together, they have massive political and financial clout. We have seen what that looks like when they work together. Working apart against each other, it could be so much more consequential still. And it just got very, very personal. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
Breaking news this hour, the US and Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, says all its aid distribution sites are closed in Gaza, urging people to stay away, in their words, for their safety. This is the second time this week that's happened. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has the latest.
Yesterday, a former Israeli defense minister revealed that the Israeli government had been arming a militant gang in southern Gaza. That's now been confirmed by Benjamin Netanyahu, that weapons have been given to a gang operating in the south to provide a counter to Hamas, a sort of a rival security force. But this gang has been linked to very extremist organizations. Some have linked it and said it's had affiliations with Islamic State. And of course, if Israel's one of its stated purposes is to demilitarize the Gaza Strip, then actually putting more weapons into Gaza, albeit not giving them to Hamas, but giving them to another group, if it doesn't cause immediate problems, would look as though it will cause further problems at some point down the line. So it's a very controversial move, a move that we understand wasn't put to the Israeli cabinet for approval before it was taken, but was done, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, on the advice of the Israeli security establishment. In Gaza itself, Palestinians, Muslims around the world are getting ready to celebrate Eid al-Adha, a major Muslim festival, a festival that would normally involve the slaughter of animals for meat, cattle, goats, for example. But there's been no fresh meat entering Gaza for many months now, and there is still a real lack of food. And so they face another major religious festival, with the war ongoing and the humanitarian crisis very, very severe indeed. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is a very controversial organisation backed by the Israelis to provide aid to Gazans. Well, it closed operations for about 48 hours this week. It said to bolster its security, and this came after 3 days when Palestinians going to get aid were either shot and killed or wounded. Conflicting reports as to who was to blame for that, but the Israeli military, at least on one occasion, has admitted opening fire, saying it fired warning shots and then fired shots at crowds approaching its soldiers. So the operations in the south were shut to try and make sure that wasn't repeated, but we now understand they are still shut today. So this will be a third day when that aid distribution mechanism is not operating. Some UN aid trucks are getting in, but again, very limited, nowhere near enough for what is needed. And so, the humanitarian crisis continues and shows no signs of being alleviated in the immediate term.
That's our correspondent Alistair Bunkle in Jerusalem. Back here, the government is pledging to end corridor care in A&E with a £450 million investment in the NHS in England. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, says he believes it means hundreds of thousands more people will get seen within the 4-hour target. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi joins us now. A mixed response to this, Ashish. Some in favour, some saying, well, what about the bigger problem of social care that's stopping people getting out of hospital beds and getting into care elsewhere? What's the analysis?
The analysis is this is immediate and short-term investment for what is going to happen in a few months' time. NHS trusts across the country are already planning how they will deliver their winter care. They will not want to see, patients will not want to see, the government will not want to see the same scenes being played out. Those appalling scenes of patients waiting on trolleys in corridors for hours and hours on end. The backlog of ambulances parked up outside hospitals waiting to discharge very sick patients, patients in hospital waiting for beds, all of that every winter has become normalised. This is the standard of care, or the lack of care, that patients have come to expect from the NHS. So when Wes Streeting and Labour came into power, they made the NHS a priority. And this plan, this urgent and emergency care plan, was trailed in January, knowing that these are the optics. This is what people see, and this is how they think the NHS performs, and they want to see an improvement. And he's promised to change that. Let's listen to what he thinks will be the numbers affected by this change.
It means about 800,000 more people will be seen within the 4 hours that they should have done. Now, over more than a decade now, we haven't been in the NHS meeting those critical targets.
We should remind people, Ashish, that next Wednesday is the all-important spending review by the Chancellor, and we have seen days now of new initiatives, funding for some things. This is the latest one in advance of that. But the big question is whether the NHS gets more funding to sort out its problems.
I suspect not, because if you've listened to anything Wes Streeting has said over the past few months, and there's been a raft of recommendations for the NHS, the Darzi plan and everything else, it will all be about making savings and efficiencies. We're not going back to the beginning of the zeros and the noughties when Labour could come in and spend money at the NHS, fix all the problems. We're in a very different economic situation now. This is going to be about efficiencies and making the NHS work properly. That's what he has said and maintained all along.
Ashish, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. To Portugal next, police there have called off new searches for Madeleine McCann after 3 days after the little girl went missing on a family holiday in the Algarve 18 years ago. Reports are suggesting that officers have not found any new evidence. Sky correspondent Dan Whitehead joins me now from Praia da Luz in Portugal. Dan, we were talking around about this time yesterday, and it looked like they were going to cut things, well, short a day earlier than they necessarily needed to.
Yeah, they had 4 days, possibly. They could have continued today, but it was about 5 o'clock last night that the cordons were lifted at that around 120-acre site, around 1.5 miles east of Praia da Luz here. The tents came down, the vans drove out, carrying the 30 or so German police officers heading back to their country. One police officer on the cordon told me they found nothing but animal bones. I mean, there may be some hope in the fact that there was a lot of radar work going on, that ground-penetrating work. After the cordons were lifted, we went inside some of the outbuildings. We could see the scratch marks over the old floors of these dilapidated barns. Those were the marks left from that radar work. That will now take, of course, weeks to analyse. So there may be some details that will come out. Obviously, this will come out from the German police, not the Portuguese. They're leading this investigation because the main suspect in this case is that Christian B, who denies any involvement in Madeleine's disappearance. But it has concluded here. Everyone has left. I think it's interesting just to note as well that the impact of Madeleine's disappearance from the apartment that's about 30 metres away from me here is still felt from business owners we're speaking to, locals. It had such a detrimental impact on the resort, and quite frankly, the people here are absolutely sick every time when this gets dragged up. 18 years on, it is a resort that is still recovering, so very difficult here. But of course, primarily disappointing, it sounds like, for the police officers and the investigation, and of course, Madeleine's parents, if it's the case that nothing has been found.
Dan, appreciate that update. Thank you very much indeed. Still to come here on Breakfast. On the 81st anniversary of D-Day, I'll be speaking to the director of the British Forces Foundation about it.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Let's take a look at the pollen forecast. There'll be a mix of sunshine and showers this morning. Once more, general rain clears eastern England, but the showers will be less widespread than yesterday. In fact, much of central and southwest England looks dry today. Temperatures are similar to what they've been recently, but lighter winds and more sunshine mean it should feel a bit warmer. The afternoon will bring further showers, some thundery, but much of Britain will dry up later. Here's the pollen map. Things will be low in the north, moderate for central parts, and as you can see there, that big band of red high in the southeast and the southwest, and the Midlands too.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Today is the anniversary of D-Day, the 81st anniversary, in fact, the largest seaborne invasion in history, which began the liberation of occupied France and Western Europe on June the 6th, 1944. Mark Cann is director of the British Forces Foundation, a former army major, and is here with me now. An important moment, but especially for anyone who served.
Yeah, I think so, because of the significance of the operation and, of course, what D-Day itself marked. I mean, the name is the beginning. I mean, D-Day is the first day of the operation, essentially, and so, therefore, it's what then followed, which was ultimately, 11 months later, the capitulation of Nazi Germany. So, yeah, it's a hugely significant day, and it signifies... I mean, D-Day is one of the emotive campaigns, everyone remembers it, but it signifies the sacrifice of everybody who took part, the national effort to defeat Nazism.
We hear about it this time every year. Of course, it was a huge anniversary last year, being the 80th. But it's also important to think, to remind people of what it was like in early June 1944. I mean, I've just read the weather forecast. All eyes, weren't they, on the weather forecast that day. Churchill poring over the possibility of going later as well. It was fundamentally important that day.
Fundamentally. And I mean, it was a force 4-5 in the Channel that day. I mean, it was a very touch-and-go decision. But of course, the later they left it, the more likely they were to be compromised on the security of the operation. So that was a hugely important thing. I mean, what was it like? I mean, I think it has a sort of glamour, D-Day, and rightly so. As I say, it was the beginning of the end, if you know what I mean. But I think, you know, what it does is it draws attention and interest, which is really important now. I mean, 80, 81, it's just a number. But what we want is the next generations to remember what we did, what we went through, you know, what those people went through, and therefore to take that spirit on.
Yes, and that spirit lived on in lots of ways, not least through the creation of things like NATO. They've been meeting in recent days.
Totally.
And, you know, are there echoes from history that should remind a lot of people about the huge collaboration, in particular between the UK and the US, that made D-Day a success?
Yes, collaboration being absolutely key. I mean, war takes place when law has broken down and relationships between nations has broken down. So any kind of collaborative effort, and the bigger the better, the more likely you are to be able to invite people to conversations before combat and to get some business done. There's always going to be conflicting interests between nations, but you've got to sometimes get through that before actually taking up arms. Sometimes it's inevitable, sometimes it isn't. Just briefly,
Mark, I mean, that reminds, like you say, 80, 81 is a number, but of course, when it was within living memory for most, we'd hear about it more often. Do you sense people are still interested in making that comparison between the past and the present when it feels longer and longer ago and there are fewer people to talk about it?
Well, yes, and because that image of these very ageing veterans, but you know, we have veterans who are leaving the military today, and they are veterans. And people would say, of course, you know, and I think the legacy is important. And history doesn't repeat itself. Human nature doesn't change, and that's what we have to remember. And I think the one thing from the Second World War and all campaigns is the spirit embodied, you know, during and since by the people who took part in it. And they were remarkable, and they endured extraordinary things and sacrificed an immense amount for us. And if we're happy with the way the world is today, then great. If we think we can do better, then we should in their name alone.
I really appreciate talking to you about it, Mark. A sage reminder of the importance of that day 81 years later. Thank you so much.
No, pleasure.
Well, coming up, I'll be talking to the yes man himself, comedian Danny Wallace, marking 20 years since he wrote that book that became a movie where he basically said yes to doing everything because It turns out a lot of people from their late 20s onwards are not having more adventures and not saying yes to things that they want to do. We'll be discussing that in a moment.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
It has been 20 years now since the release of the best-selling book Yes Man, which went on to become a Hollywood blockbuster. I think it starred Jim Carrey, didn't it? The book documented this man, Danny Wallace's experience of saying yes to every question that came his way. We asked him to come on. He said yes, and I forced Amanda and James to join us. They couldn't answer, I just told them. Danny, it's good to see you. 20 years on,
yes,
someone asked you to do this, and you said...
I said yes. I even started by saying yes. I didn't even realise. Yeah, it just became muscle memory at some point.
You are the yes man.
I am the yes man, yes.
So why, after all these years, you decided it would be a good idea to give it another go?
Well, it's a funny thing. I never really stopped saying yes. I decided to sort of just say yes more in life, because only when you do things happen, you know? You have to sort of push that first domino over. And then I saw this research, this Halford research, that said that people stop doing it when they're 28. Yeah. And I thought, that's a very sad thing. And I don't know why it is. Is it because we get into a routine? Is it because we just decide that life is more comfortable that way?
Yeah.
Is it because we just become less, you know, or more risk-averse?
It's hard to say yes when you think about pensions, mortgages, children, rising interest rates. James, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. What's the most popular thing that people
don't say yes to, for example?
Well, it can be lots and lots of little things. It can be, for example, people regret not having picked up an instrument when they were younger and you know, hone that skill. Or it can be that people wish that they spoke a different language, you know, something like that.
See, that's mine. So the instrument thing, it's good for everyone that I don't play an instrument because I've been tone deaf ever since I was born. But the language thing is definitely something I regret not doing. And working in sport, interviewing lots of footballers, sportsmen from all around the world. If you speak another language, it would have been so important. You create that bond with them. So it's something I regret.
We've got the stats here, Danny. We've got the stats. Mastering a foreign language, 21% wish they'd said yes to that. Skydiving. Anyone skydived, Amanda? Done a skydive?
No, bungee jump, but not skydive.
I think that's probably in here. 15% wish they'd skydive. Learning music instrument, 15%. Moving abroad.
Do you know, on that note,
14%.
The first person I met when I came here today was the makeup lady, and she is a proper yes person.
Yeah.
She has lived in 6 different countries and is about to move to Japan. And I said, why Japan? And she said, why not?
I didn't know that.
So and then I sit down and I watch your excellent broadcast, and you have already this morning interviewed a man who has said yes to rowing 3,500 miles with his son.
Yeah.
And something he said that I thought was so in the spirit of this and so important was he said, I want to die with memories, not with dreams. And I feel that that is the brilliant philosophy that we should kind of live by, because I think from writing the book and from reading this research as well, it feels like the things that you regret most in life are the things that you didn't do, not the things that you did do. Because the things you did do that went wrong, you can sort of compartmentalise that, you can learn from it, but you'll never know who that person could have been that you might have met in that place you didn't say yes to.
Are you a dad?
I am a dad.
Kids, I'm a dad. You're a mum as well, Amanda. That's what. It's not the kids' fault, but that's what gets in the way. You've got other responsibilities. You can't keep saying yes to going crazy and going down a zip wire. 12%, getting a tattoo, 13%.
Moving abroad, leaving
retiring, 13%. Definitely going to say yes to that at some point. Amanda, anything you wish you'd done and haven't done yet? Want to say yes to?
Well, I mean, I always wish... I had an opportunity to go and live in France when I had just graduated university, but I was working at a radio station at the time and I was advised, no, you need to stay and get on the career ladder, so I did that, and I never learned French. I could have been a journalist in France. But then it's quite different, isn't it? Something long-term, learning an instrument, learning a language, between just being like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go skydiving on a one-off, I guess. That's
Danny, was there anything you said yes to that you regret?
Yes.
Apart from today, obviously.
Look, I mean, I think the way to attack it is to not really have those regrets, because you can learn from everything. And if something does go wrong, you go, well, OK, I won't do that again. But you mentioned having kids. I mean, gosh, you've got to say yes a lot to kids.
After they exist, you can't say, I wish I'd said no now, can you?
That's the biggest dilemma, isn't it?
It's not the done thing. It's not the done thing. I'm just looking more at the stats. Starting a new career, 10%. I've done that. It didn't work out, so I came back to broadcast news. Who knew? And they seem to want me.
And do you regret that? Did you regret that?
Do you know what I think? It's all a learning curve, isn't it? You know, sometimes it worked out fine, but sometimes things don't work out fine. But I think it's what you said. It's what you learn from that experience. I think more generally, people are risk averse because they think failure is terminal. But it teaches you a lesson, doesn't it? I mean, on that score, if you said yes, something hasn't quite worked out, but you've been a bit more stoical about it, thinking, well, look, at least I've learned something about myself. There's always a takeout from an experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of my career, probably. But you know, there is always that takeout, and failure isn't something to be feared. It's sort of an achievement in itself, because it teaches you those lessons and those things that you can take on to the next thing and hopefully not fail at.
I love how thought-provoking this is, James. I'm sitting there thinking, God, you know, it says retire. Maybe I'll come back next week. I don't know, but you know,
these aren't orders, by the way.
Person on social media again. It was just ignore them.
It was my mum.
I think it's definitely thought provoking. I'm sure many of the audience and viewers will be thinking that themselves. I look back and I've had a couple of moments where I've said yes, travel, lived abroad, lived in Tokyo for a short period, lived in America for 2 years. Moved back because it didn't work out how I wanted. So, although it didn't work out, I don't necessarily regret it.
But you've got stories, right? You've got stories and you've got experiences and you've got people that you never would have met, that you met in places you never would have gone. And you could have just been sat, you know, at home, in your pants, eating a samosa, watching The Weakest Link.
100%. Don't give the audience a visual of that.
I often say yes to that very afternoon. Danny, it's really great to see you. We've got 20 minutes left. Would you like to present 20 minutes of live breaking news?
Oh, I'm such a sports head. I'm not, by the way. I wouldn't be able to do that. But I think you're doing the sports next, so I'll just do that.
Yeah, that will put you under too much pressure. It's great to see you. Really appreciate you talking about this, and great memories of that book and that film all those years ago. So good to see you back. Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers.
So, Danny, do you want to tease the sport? What's to come next?
First of all, of course, we'll be having the ping pong. And after that, there'll be the football with all the throw-ins. And could David Beckham finally receive his long-awaited knighthood? That was good.
He's done a good job.
I'm out of a job.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
How do you manage to keep your spirits up and the spirits of your teammates after challenges you may face?
Self-confidence in yourself and your own ability is such an important aspect to have.
I've had a number of injuries the last year and a half or 2 years, and they've taken their toll on my head at times.
Sometimes you just need to grab somebody and just give them a hug, tell them that it'll be okay.
Professional footballers helping young people with their mental health. That's the aim of virtual soccer schools, alongside learning platform Amazing People Schools. Online, in person, and with AI technology.
My question is, how do you deal with stress on and off the pitch?
Football is the most powerful sport in the world. And utilising footballers, we just see them as players on the pitch, passing the ball and scoring goals, but they have so much more to offer. So at VSS, we're providing them with a platform to showcase their mental health strategies, their setbacks, how they deal with anxiety, pressure and growth mindset, just not on the pitch, but how they utilise it off the pitch as well.
Former Arsenal defender Thomas Vermaelen was the latest footballer to take part in the charity's first ever in-person session.
Allow yourself to be disappointed.
I enjoy passing on experiences, if it's about mental health, my career, the pressure I've been through, giving my experience to the younger generation is something that I really like. In earlier years, we didn't really speak about it, so it's just we get along and we go through tough times, but you hear now players basically after their career opening up about the struggles they had during. As ex-professionals, if we can give some sort of experience of insight, what to expect, or any advice we can give to the younger generation, I think it's only good. We can prepare them a little bit.
That sentiment was shared by Chelsea midfielder Kiernan Dewsbury Hall.
It is important in this day and age to talk about it because there's a lot of people that go through it. As a youngster, I probably let things affect me a little bit more, and I was a bit more naive to it. But the older you get, the more experience you get, I think you just learn to not let it get you down. If you see negative comments or whatever, just don't let it get you down. Look, just see the positive ones and how you can use that in a good way. As I've gone along in my career, I've learned to deal with that in a better way.
Pressure is in the moment can be very uncomfortable. At the same time, it's also something what gives excitement to the career and the games. But yeah, if you really struggle with the pressure and you see it's affecting your performances, I wish then in those days you could speak about it more, but I think in those days it was more like a sign of weakness sometimes.
It's that perception of weakness around mental health that the charity wants to break down amongst the young.
It's amazing to see the young people come on to our sessions, have that confidence to ask the player a question on real tough subject matters such as social media.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Good stuff, James. Thank you very much indeed. Still to come here on Breakfast. Sky News launches its new money newsletter this morning. We'll bring you exclusive tips on savings from mortgages to catch up. Find out more shortly.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
Enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster that's just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town.
It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change.
We've been crushed. Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Scottish Labour has won the Hamilton by-election from the SNP, a surprise victory in what many saw as being a two-horse race between the SNP and Reform UK. Joining me now is Brian Leishman, Scottish Labour MP for Alloa and Grangemouth. Good morning to you. Big smile on your face there. Were you surprised?
Good morning. Thanks for having me on the show. I was in campaigning with our candidate, Davy Russell, and the reception we got on the doors was overall a positive one. So the result is welcome, but not all that surprising.
Pretty narrow in the end. I know we were saying there a lot were anticipating this two-horse race between the SNP and Reform, and they're coming up strong in second and third place, though.
Indeed, yes, but it's a Scottish Labour gain, and I think it shows that people can and have put their trust in a future Scottish Labour government in Holyrood next year, and that's what we in the party are going to be working towards.
That's a pretty big task, though, isn't it? Because, you know, the SNP, I'm sure, points to by-elections being a bit of an outlier. When it comes to the Holyrood elections, people may revert to type, may do something different. Actually, it's Reform coming from 0 to third who've got the momentum.
Well, I would respectfully push back on that a little bit. I think what we've seen in a Scottish context is that we've seen 2 decades of a really abject SNP government where every public services that we rely on in this country has deteriorated. People are sick and fed up, and they do appreciate that they need a new direction. And yesterday's result shows, or this morning's result, I should say, shows that that direction is in a Scottish Labour government in Holyrood.
Yeah. As we look ahead to next year and fighting in those May elections, are you expecting the Scottish Government in Westminster to perhaps invest a bit more in Scotland to perhaps capitalise on this victory? Of course, it's the spending review of the Chancellor next Wednesday. Would you like to see more Scotland-focused spending as a result?
I think what we've got to look at there is we've got to cast our minds back to the Chancellor's first budget there, and we saw a record devolution settlement for Scotland. And quite frankly, since that devolution settlement has been forthcoming, the SNP government have continued with their woeful record in government. So Scotland has been well looked after financially from the Chancellor's first budget, and I hope that that continues, and then we can certainly press ahead with the momentum of trying to win in Holyrood next year.
But Brian, back to that point, just to finish off, it certainly looks like reform. Yes, they didn't win it. They came third, but they've got the momentum from an almost zero base. Is that a concern for Scottish Labour?
I think it's a concern for the entire political class, if you will. It shows that something reactionary and extreme and divisive is in danger of taking hold. And I think then what we've got to do as a party in government in Westminster is really improve upon our record in our first 10 months and really invest in public services and communities to show that something better for our country is possible, and that is with a Labour government in Westminster and a Scottish Labour government in Holyrood.
OK, Brian Leishman, thank you very much indeed. OK, let's take a quick look at today's weather now.
The perfect climate, wherever the destination. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
It is looking unsettled for a little while yet, with widespread heavy showers or more prolonged rain, especially tomorrow. It's already showery, with parts of eastern England seeing more prolonged rain at the moment. That rain will clear this morning to leave a mix of sunny spells and showers across the UK and Ireland. The showers will be less widespread than yesterday, with much of central and southwest England avoiding them. Temperatures fairly similar to recently, but lighter winds and more sunshine mean it should feel a little bit warmer than it has in recent days. The afternoon will bring further showers, some heavy and thundery, but much of Britain will dry up by this evening. Showers in the west are going to merge into longer spells of rain overnight, while spreading eastwards, but northern Scotland and northeast England look mainly dry. It'll become windy in the southwest. Expect widespread showers tomorrow, some heavy, prolonged and thundery, especially for England and Wales. Localised disruption is still possible too. It's going to be on the cooler side, with strong winds affecting the south. Looking further ahead to Sunday, it looks a bit drier, less windy, but there will be the odd shower around then too.
The perfect climate, whatever the forecast. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, Sky News is launching a new money newsletter today with exclusive tips on savings. Let's speak to our Money Live reporter, Jess Sharp, who is in our newsroom. For more on this, good morning to Jess. Jess. Good to see you. We are going to be discussing, or the Money newsletter is going to be discussing everything from mortgages to ketchup, apparently. So should we start at the mortgages end, and we'll get onto the sauce in a bit?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, our new money newsletter that launches today is designed to be the personal finance companion straight into your email inbox. So it's going to give you everything you need to know on the latest mortgage rates, saving rates, bank switches, broadband deals, energy fixes, everything that you need to know to make sure that you're making your cash stretch as far as possible. So at 11 a.m. today, it will officially launch and land in our subscribers' emails. And we've got a lot of stuff in there. So you've got exclusive tips, analysis from our experts in our business and economics team. And we've also got the money team's results from our recent ketchup taste test. We had to try 14 of them. So you'll be able to see our top 5 today.
OK, look, I don't want to give the game away, but was it easy to taste test so many sauces?
Look, I'm not going to say it's easy. I had to eat a lot of chips and I had to compare a lot of them along with our team of 6 expert testers here in the newsroom. But the results are quite interesting, and our top one actually only costs £1 a bottle.
There you go. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as they say, if I can use that for ketchup. Sometimes there are those surprises where the cheaper stuff is actually the better tasting stuff, maybe even the healthier stuff. Let's park the ketchup there for the time being, because a lot of the big decisions people worry about are the ones where they're spending a lot of their hard-earned cash, their mortgages, perhaps a car purchase or hire or whatever it happens to be. And so you're going to be offering some of that big weekly advice as well, Jess?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, making decisions about money can be really daunting for anyone, and nobody wants to think that they're making the wrong decision when it comes to their hard-earned cash. So we're aiming to give them as much expert information that's really easy and digestible so that they can make the best decisions for themselves.
Jess, great stuff. I look forward to signing up. People can do that when the Money newsletter launches in just over an hour's time. Just scan the QR code. It's on the screen right now, as you can see, and it will take you right to where you need to sign up to. Well, yeah, who doesn't want to find out what the best tasting ketchup is if it saves you a few quid? Until the top of the hour, Amanda's back just to chew over some of the politics we've heard today. We've been talking to Steve Reid from Labour, Chris Philp from the Conservatives. We just heard from Brian Leishman as well from Scottish Labour as well. Ultimately, a surprise win for them in this by-election in Hamilton.
Absolutely. I think all the polling in Scotland and the kind of prevailing consensus appeared to be that Labour had rather squandered their success at the last general election, their hopes of taking over the Scottish government from the SNP. But now that does look like it is very much a live possibility again, really winning this victory. Sir Keir Starmer, I'm sure, will be very grateful to see that waking up this morning, but also, interestingly, how well Reform have done, because I think that's the other story in this. Yes, they've just lost their chairman, resigning in a kind of bit of a shock resignation last night. So a very tumultuous 24 hours for Reform.
Yeah, it really is. It'd be interesting to see what happens with the absence of Zia Youssef as chairman. Amanda, thank you very much indeed. Thanks for this morning. Gareth Barlow will be here up next with all the day's top stories after this short break. Bye-bye.